Sophie posted this video of her in red having a moment on the court.
That single moment said everything. Sophie Cunningham drops a throwback photo in classic fever red. Caitlin Clark replies with just 3 words, "It's time to run it back." On the surface, it feels simple, almost casual. But then Sophie fires back with, "Only if you cuddle and make me dinner twice a week." It sounds like harmless banter. Funny, light-hearted. But before anyone laughs it off, understand this, that playful exchange has quietly turned into a serious business problem for Indiana's front office. Because behind the scenes, there's a very real scenario unfolding that could cost the Fever one of their most valuable pieces, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what happens between the lines on the court.
Been a while since we just talked straight Fever action, but free agency is leaving a lot of questions. Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, Chloe Bibby probably won't be on this team, although I wish we could figure out how to get Red back on the team. Yeah, I would appreciate that. As always, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you check to see if you're still subscribed. YouTube is still.
Right now, free agency is essentially frozen. CBA negotiations have dragged into a second month with no clear end in sight. We know the season will expand to 50 to 54 games, up from 44 last year. But here's the part almost nobody is discussing, the expansion draft rules. Indiana must protect its core players from incoming franchises Portland and Toronto. Historically, teams are allowed to protect only 5 or 6 players. That's it. Clark, Boston, Hull, Smith. Those names are automatic locks. That's already 4 spots gone, which means the Fever are staring at just 1, maybe 2 protection slots for everyone else. And this is where things get messy, because both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham are unrestricted free agents who have publicly said they want to resign.
Many Indiana Fever fans want nothing more than for their team to bring Sophie Cunningham back in free agency this winter, whenever the WNBA league office and its players agree to a new CBA. Of course, Cunningham isn't the only member of the Indiana 2025 team that fans are clamoring to bring back, as Kelsey Mitchell is just as beloved among the fan base.
Let's deal with the nonsense first. The Instagram comment section under that exchange turned toxic almost instantly, exactly as expected from certain corners of WNBA social media. Someone genuinely asked, "Has Caitlin Clark ever cheated on her boyfriend Connor?" All because of a joke between teammates. This is the reality of covering this league. 2 players can't engage in normal, playful banter without people trying to manufacture drama that has nothing to do with basketball. Caitlin Clark is in a committed relationship. Sophie Cunningham is straight. They are friends. They are teammates. That's the entire story. End of discussion. Moving on.
Crap. And for some of us, we appreciate that. Where was the rest of y'all? And yeah, y'all all gonna keep getting called out until you show that fire. The good news is Indiana doesn't necessarily have to choose when it comes to getting Cunningham or Mitchell. Both players have expressed interest in returning. The Fever's front office will have enough money and flexibility to re-sign them, both if they so desire. Well, here's the problem.
Now let's talk about what actually matters, roster construction and value. Sophie Cunningham was the second most searched female athlete in America in 2024, according to Google's year-end data. Not second in the WNBA, second among all female athletes nationwide. She has a podcast on the Volume Network. She appears regularly across major media platforms. She's built a real, loyal fan base that extends far beyond basketball circles. And here's the key detail everyone overlooks. She spent only 1 season with the Fever, 1 year in Indiana, and she exploded into a national figure. That's not just about personality. That's the Caitlin Clark effect. Playing alongside Clark provides a media platform unlike anything else in women's basketball right now.
But they have to protect her. If they leave her out there to be drafted, just from a pure marketing and business standpoint, if you're a new franchise, you draft her first thing. Because she's one of the few players in this league that's got a fan base. That's all there is to it. Has her own high profile podcast on the Volume. And she's in on.
But there's another element that doesn't show up in analytics, marketing decks, or Google search trends. Go back and watch the tape from last season. When Caitlin Clark got hit, when she got knocked down, when opponents took cheap shots at the league's biggest star, who consistently stepped up, who actually got in people's faces. It was Sophie Cunningham, not talking tough in post-game interviews, doing it in the moment. That matters. Team chemistry.
And here is this. Has Caitlin Clark ever cheated on her boyfriend Connor? Guys, I'm not justifying hitting that. Wow. Even the fans, I mean, we found this out. The fans of this league, God, they're ate up with agenda. Always got to make something, of course. You see that. They want to make this into a Sophie and Caitlin. They're clowning around with each other.
So now let's run the expansion draft math, because this is where Indiana's front office faces a brutal decision. If the Fever re-sign both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham before the expansion draft, they are forced to protect both. That immediately consumes 2 of their 5 or 6 protection slots. But what's the alternative? If Sophie is left unprotected, whether by choice or by necessity, what happens next? Portland and Toronto are building franchises from zero. They need players who sell tickets on day one. They need names that generate headlines instantly. Sophie Cunningham checks every box. She's a reliable rotation player with legitimate star power and real marketing value. If she's available in that expansion draft, she's gone. No debate. Guaranteed selection. Possibly first round. Possibly first overall.
Disappointed if Sophie Cunningham is not on this team. I can tell you that right now. I can't remember exactly how many they can protect. I think it's 6. It's 5 or 6. So, Rhodes, you're supposed to know that, really? I mean, no. I've made videos on it. I think it's 5 or 6, but I'm not going to look it up because I just brought it up impromptu. Tell me what you think. Sophie and Caitlin, I feel like have to run it back.
Here's why this moment carries real weight in the Fever's decision-making process. This is not simply about whether Sophie Cunningham is a better basketball player than whoever else Indiana might leave unprotected. This is about understanding the brutal business reality of expansion drafts. New franchises don't just need talent, they need names. They need players who can instantly attract fans, generate headlines, and create local buzz. They need someone who can walk into a radio studio or sit down for a podcast and actually pull an audience. Portland and Toronto are entering a league that just watched Caitlin Clark drive record attendance and television ratings. They are stepping into a WNBA landscape where star power and media presence matter more than at any point in league history. Sophie Cunningham is exactly the type of asset expansion teams target first. Indiana has to balance that against on-court priorities. Kelsey Mitchell averaged 17 points per game last season and has been the Fever's most reliable scorer for years. From a pure basketball standpoint, she's the priority. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If the Fever can only protect one unrestricted free agent, the basketball decision and the business decision may not align. Mitchell is the better player. Cunningham might be the bigger loss. Because what Sophie brings, media visibility, edge, personality, and cultural impact, is significantly harder to replace through free agency or the draft. And then there's the Caitlin Clark factor. That Instagram exchange wasn't just playful banter. It was a public signal. Clark wants Sophie back. She made that clear. And when your generational franchise player expresses a preference, it matters. Not just because keeping her happy is important, but because she's identifying something about chemistry and fit that doesn't always show up in analytics. Look at Sophie's impact beyond the box score last season. The Fever didn't just improve, they transformed from a dysfunctional lottery team into a playoff squad. Yes, Clark's arrival mattered. Yes, Aliyah Boston's development mattered. But adding veterans like Cunningham also played a role. She knew how to play alongside a ball-dominant guard. She didn't need to be the focal point. She took charges. She knocked down open threes. She defended physically. She brought energy off the bench. Those are exactly the types of players you want surrounding a young superstar. The timeline only makes this more complicated. Free agency can't officially begin until the CBA is finalized, and negotiations are stalled over revenue sharing and salary cap structure. Nobody knows when that gets resolved. It could be next week. It could be next month. But whenever it happens, the league is heading toward a compressed free agency window immediately followed by expansion draft preparation. Indiana doesn't have the luxury of waiting to see how the market develops. They need to decide now who they are prioritizing and who they are willing to risk losing. There's another angle that doesn't get enough attention. What happens if Sophie Cunningham lands in Portland or Toronto and becomes a true face of the franchise? She's 28, entering her prime, with a proven ability to generate media attention and fan engagement. Put her in a featured role on an expansion team building its identity from scratch, and she could absolutely break out. Maybe not as a first-team All-WNBA player, but as a fan favorite who sells jerseys, drives ticket sales, and becomes the emotional center of a new franchise. That has real value. And if the Fever lose her for nothing, or wise, lose her in the expansion draft because they didn't protect her, that's a missed opportunity that could haunt the organization for years. The counterargument is clear and valid. You can't build a roster around sentiment, Instagram engagement, or podcast numbers. You have to win basketball games. Mitchell is a superior scorer. Lexi Hull showed real growth. Katie Lou Samuelson can shoot. Erica Wheeler provides veteran leadership. If protecting Sophie means exposing one of those players, maybe that's not the right basketball move. Roster decisions should be based on basketball value, not social media buzz. But here's the reality of modern professional sports. The line between basketball value and entertainment value has never been blurrier. The WNBA just negotiated a media deal worth roughly $200 million per year, up from around $50 million. That jump wasn't driven by parity or playoff drama. It was driven by Caitlin Clark producing record ratings and unprecedented mainstream attention. The league is finally being compensated for its entertainment value as much as its on-court product. In that environment, a player like Sophie Cunningham, who brings authentic media presence and fan engagement, has more value than traditional metrics suggest. So where does this leave the Fever? Facing a decision every front office hates, choosing between good options with no obvious right answer. Re-sign both Mitchell and Cunningham, protect them both, and risk losing someone else valuable. Prioritize Mitchell and let Sophie test free agency, hoping she either returns or avoids selection by Portland or Toronto. Or make the aggressive move. Lock up Sophie specifically because of her off-court value and her chemistry with Clark, even if that forces a painful decision elsewhere on the roster. What we know for sure is this: Caitlin Clark wants Sophie Cunningham. The fan base wants her back. Sophie wants to be back. The only remaining question is whether the front office values what she brings enough to make it happen. And if they don't, if they let her walk or leave her unprotected and she ends up in Portland or Toronto, they'd better be absolutely right about whoever they choose instead. Because watching Sophie become a fan favorite in another city while Indiana explains why they didn't keep her would be a long-term PR nightmare. The CBA will eventually get done. Free agency will open. The expansion draft will arrive. And when it does, we'll find out exactly how the Indiana Fever value the combination of on-court production, off-court marketability, locker room chemistry, and franchise player preference. Sophie Cunningham represents all four. The smart money says Indiana finds a way to keep her, but in a league where business decisions don't always align with common sense, nothing is guaranteed until the contract is signed. So what do you think the Fever should do? Protect Sophie and risk losing someone else? Let her test free agency and hope for the best? Or is this whole debate overblown because she's just a role player amplified by playing next to Caitlin Clark? Drop your take in the comments, because this decision is going to define Indiana's offseason one way or another.